What's up, everyone? Welcome to The Point. I'm your host, Ana Kasparian, and we have an all-star panel today. We have some sexy yet insanely brilliant panelists to join us. In fact, let's go ahead and meet them. We have Sandra Daugherty. She is the host of Sex Nerd Sandra podcast. You guys should definitely check that out. And we also have Cara Santa, host of the Talk Nerdy podcast. How are you ladies doing?
Good.
Great.
I'm so excited to have you on. I mean, come on. Two insanely hot and smart women on the panel. If these videos don't go viral, I don't know what the hell will. Anyway, so what are we going to talk about on the show today? We're going to start off with one celebrity who says that being a celebrity is, quote, dumb. Who is it and why does he feel that way? Also, another example of another school using a zero tolerance policy to almost criminalize a 5-year-old. And a backpacker comes home with a strange little critter crawled up her nose. And then an iPhone-controlled sex toy. Is this one of a kind? We'll give you the details on that. And then finally, my favorite type of story, the worst tattoos of all time, because there's nothing better than a permanent mistake. Now, let's start off with celebrities, and a celebrity who made a really interesting point about how fame can be pretty dumb. Now, Zach Galifianakis came into fame, or shot into fame, in his role in The Hangover. But recently, he also starred in another movie called Birdman, which is actually pretty negative towards celebrities. It kind of tears celebrities down a little bit. And he was quoted as saying the following: "Being a celebrity is shit. It's dumb. I'm not interested in it. I like to be an actor and that's it. The blurred lines are, I think, man-made. I think celebrity is a man-made thing. It's not innate in us. We have people telling us we should pay attention to these people for the wrong reasons, their personal lives and that stuff." Now, I think that's a really interesting thing to say. He also continues to say, "I'm just being honest. I would rather do my work and go home and watch Lifetime or something." Okay, so he says that he loves what he does, but he just doesn't want all the extra attention that comes along with it. I think that's a fascinating point to make, but is this a case of a first world problem? Does it sound whiny to you? Should we get out our little violins? I don't know. Cara, make your point.
I think that it's probably both. I think that, yes, when you have a certain amount of fame, there's a lot of things that come along with it that you have to kind of accept or make a decision, like we saw Dave Chappelle making, or we've seen other celebrities doing the same thing because the fame overwhelmed them. At the same time, I do think that we hold a microscope up to celebrities' lives a way that we never did in the past, and I don't know, I can't imagine living that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sandra, what about you?
Okay, so I was freaking out a while ago when my podcast started to get more attention. I'd never gotten that kind of attention before, so I started looking into research around celebrity, and there's very little research around what it feels like to be a celebrity. And the reality is so different from their point of view versus everybody else's. So there's a lot of negatives that go along with it, so I can completely understand having a negative feeling toward it, but it's still like, you can criticize it, but you're still really lucky, really lucky, so shut up a little bit.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. It's really easy for someone to kind of have a negative reaction to what Galifianakis is saying there. I mean, my initial reaction was, dude, you're wealthy, you're successful, there are people out there who can't even make ends meet or put food on the table for their families, why are you complaining? But at the same time, I think of other celebrities like Amanda Bynes, and she's going through mental health issues in a very public way right now, and you have tabloids tearing her down and making the situation even worse. So I could totally understand where Galifianakis is coming from when you have complete strangers being so interested in personal elements of your life that they really have no business knowing about. So here's the question for the story. Have you ever felt like what you do for a living is worth it? Or not worth it? Okay, let me start with you, Sandra.
Oh man, I mean, how can I not feel like what I do? As a sex educator and a public speaker, and I help people. That's kind of the heart of what I do, and it sounds kind of like rah, rah to say that, but I mean, honestly, if I have a hard time feeling like it's not worth it, like I'm tired, I'm drained, or if I'm not taking care of myself the way I should be, it sometimes doesn't feel worth it, but then I remember that, I mean, people will write me and be like, you helped save my marriage, you know, you've changed my life, you've set me free, stuff like that, and I go, well, gosh darn it, of course it's worth it.
Nice.
You know?
That's a good feeling. That's definitely a good feeling.
I like that you say, gosh darn it. That's so you.
Cara, what about you?
No, I mean, I'm a science communicator, so I have the best job in the world. No offense to you guys. But it's so much fun to be able to work to do my part to improve science literacy. I'm so passionate about it. But if I look back at historically, you know, I was working on a PhD. I was going to become a bench scientist. I was spending a lot of days doing animal research, which I totally support and promote. But there were days where I was like, is this in vain? Is this something that, is this really going to help anybody? I don't think I was as good a bench scientist as I am a teacher, and so I had to make a decision to switch gears with my career. At that time, yes, I do think that for my personal choice, maybe what I was doing wasn't worth it, but I turned it into something that was.
Yeah, that's a great story. I mean, I have my days here at TYT where I'm like, what am I doing with my life, and is it making a difference? So, I mean, you take the show as an example. I mean, this started off as a very wonky, long-form political discussion show, and then it kind of turned into what it is now, which isn't necessarily as substantive, but I think that it brings up a lot of really interesting, societal phenomenons and things like that. So I think the conversation is interesting enough. When it comes to what I do on a broader sense, I think a lot of times I let negative comments make me question what I'm doing for a living. So when we do stories about professional athletes beating their wives and we have comments that are justifying it, I'm like, why the hell am I wasting my time trying to convince these assholes that that is not the right thing to do, right? But then at the same time, same thing happens to me, Sandra, where someone will email in from a different country sometimes, and they'll say, you know what, your support for the gay community has made me confident enough to come out to my parents. And that makes my job worth it. But I do want to hear from you guys. Do you ever feel like what you're doing for a living is not worth it? What are your goals? What do you want to do with your life? We want to hear from you. So comment in the section below, and we'll see you guys soon. A kindergartner in Alabama, I'm talking about a 5-year-old, was forced to sign a suicide contract. Now, why the hell did this happen? Well, apparently she had the audacity to pick up a crayon and pretend as though it was a gun, and she went pew, pew. And so, of course, administrators at the school were alarmed by this because how dare she pick up a crayon? She must be someone who's gonna do a mass shooting on campus, right? And so as a result, they made her sign a suicide contract. Now, I would venture to say that a 5-year-old probably has no freaking idea what suicide is, but now she does. Now, the mom did release a statement about this. She said the following: while I was in the lobby waiting, they had my 5-year-old sign a contract about suicide and homicide. Most of these words on here she's never heard of in her life. This isn't right. She's 5 years old. Now, I think this is another example of a zero tolerance policy, people overreacting to something that kids often do. But I want to hear from you guys. Sandra, make your point.
Yeah, this is absurd. This is the most absurd thing ever. Relating it to my field, which feels weird because we're talking about kindergartners, but people often will fear what they don't understand. And fantasy and play is something that we don't talk about, and the science behind it and why it's important to our survival as a species. And so seeing someone playing and not understanding what that means, it's like fantasy and being like, oh, I have a fantasy that I'm not even going to say anything because everyone's going to start thinking about that. When people go, oh, that means you want to do that in real life, and that's terrible. And it's like, no, it's a very different thing. And so kids who play cops and robbers,
it doesn't mean they're going to go out and be cops and robbers.
They're not hoping that they eventually kill their friends.
Right.
And it's very not the case.
Right.
Very not. So,
yeah, Cara, what do you think?
I think that what we're seeing here is something that's kind of a misguided attempt by educators and administrators to do what they think is good. Unfortunately, we in this country are obsessed with preventive measures for crime, and it's very hard for us to sit still with the fact that sometimes bad things happen no matter what you do. So, we're obsessed with take off your shoes when you go through the airport because one time one person had a bomb in their shoe. Not looking at the data that this has actually never prevented another crime from occurring in the airport. And I think the same thing is happening here. They see a certain behavior that in some sort of twisted logic could be a precursor to something. Let's nip it in the bud, let's stop it in its tracks. Look, we did our part to prevent another school shooting. It's very misguided. They're not looking at the data, they're not looking at the science or the evidence. And in some ways, yes, I think that they're actually exposing this child to things that are the parents' responsibility to expose the child to.
I think that's really the biggest problem here. I mean, this 5-year-old is not thinking about suicide and she's not thinking about homicide. This is a clear case of a zero tolerance policy that has gone awry, right? Yes. You have educators and administrators that don't want to use human judgment, so they just resort to a zero tolerance policy to deal with something that might make them a little uncomfortable. Just think instead of have a knee-jerk reaction to something like this. So here's the question. What was one rule your parents were overly strict about? Sandra?
Oh my goodness. So I grew up in the age where kids were getting abducted a lot on the news, meaning that it wasn't actually happening as much as people thought, but they were terrifying parents all over the country. So I wasn't allowed to go outside. They were terrified of me hurting myself just generally, so I had to wear elbow guards and knee guards and helmets. If I wanted to go rollerblading, at least they let me do that. They didn't let me have any power tools or anything if I wanted to build stuff. Like I wanted to do things with my hands. They didn't let me do anything. I was very protected. I will say, however, they were very sex positive in my upbringing that way.
That's awesome.
And the thing about this story that reminds me that it's like saying we can't talk about sex, there's no education around sex because then it's dangerous and you just have to nip it in the bud and say no. And what you need to do is be educating people about violence.
Absolutely.
Instead of just saying no, pew, pew,
Because the oppression could potentially be breeding more violent behavior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cara?
So I grew up, weirdly, we grew up in the same era, but I grew up totally playing in the street. Like, the rule was be home by the time the sun sets.
Los Angeles. Where were you?
Plano, Texas.
Right.
There you go. But I did grow up to a Mormon family, if you haven't followed my work, and all the times that I've mentioned this on TYT before. So, you know, what my parents were really strict about was going to church. It was a requirement. I had to go to church every Sunday for 3 hours, every Wednesday night for 2 hours for youth group, and every day before school.
Shut up!
At 6 a.m. That was seminary. It was Bible and Book of Mormon study. And to the extent that if one of my friends invited me to go to church with them, let's say I had a Jewish friend who was like, can you come to synagogue? Or I had, you know, a Presbyterian friend, can you come to church with me on Sunday? My parents would only say yes if in return they came to church with me that week. I couldn't miss my own services to go to somebody else. It would have to be on top of all of the church that I was required to.
I didn't realize you had to go to church every day.
Every day.
That's
before
amazing.
School, at 6 a.m.
And devastating.
Yes.
All right. So for me, my mom was strict about almost everything. I was super sheltered growing up, which is why when I went into adulthood, I was naive about a lot of things, but I've come a long way. But the one thing that she was insanely strict about was sleepovers. I never slept over anywhere as a kid, right? So my friends were like, come on, we're having a sleepover, come by. And my mom's like, no. She's like, it is not safe. You do not do that, right? And she was like worried that we were gonna sneak out or cause trouble, whatever. But then as I grew older, I realized, no, she's worried about all the sexual assaults and rapes that she hears about on the news on a regular basis, right? And when we started reporting on those things on TYT, I was like, damn, you know what? When I have kids, I'm probably gonna be like, no, I'm not gonna let my kid go camping. No, I'm not gonna let my kid sleep over the priest's house. No, I'm not gonna let my kid do any of that shit. You know what I mean?
Answer B is correct.
Never at the priest's house.
Absolutely. But we do want to hear from you as well. So go ahead and comment in the section below. Let us know what your parents were overly strict about. Who knows? Maybe your parents were free spirits and they let you do whatever the hell we want. We want to hear from you too. Comment on the story as well, and we will see you guys soon. A backpacker came home from a nice little trip in Asia, and she realized that there was a creepy, crawly thing up her nose. Now, her name is Danielle Liverani, and at first she thought that her nosebleeds were caused by the fact that she had gotten into a motorcycle accident. But it turns out that shortly after she returned home, one day she realizes that there's something crawling out of her nose. So you guys like my little gesturing, like calling out, as if you guys can't figure out what that looks like, right? Anyway, then she tried to grab it, but as soon as she did so, it crawled back up. So she's like, what the hell is going on? What is that? Well, every time she would take a shower, she noticed that the same thing would happen. It would kind of come out, and then finally she realized that it's a leech, okay? So she ended up going to the hospital. Now, let me tell you what she encountered in her own words. When I was in the shower, he would come right out as far as my bottom lip, and I can see him sticking out the bottom of my nose. So when that happened, I jumped out of the shower to look really closely in the mirror, and I saw ridges on him. That's when I realized he was an animal. All right. So she goes to the hospital, they take it out. Apparently it was excruciating because a leech latches onto you and they hold on for dear life. But fortunately she was able to get it out of her nose. I want to know what you guys think about this. Cara, make your point.
Okay, so this thing crawled out and back in multiple times during multiple showers, which I don't know about you, but I don't shower like 3 times a day.
Yeah.
So does this mean that for days and days she was like, there's something living in my head?
Yes.
Maybe, you know, maybe I'll see if I can, like, if it works itself out before I go to the hospital.
No, what's incredible, just to give you some more information, The doctor said that the leech probably crawled up her nose as she was swimming somewhere in Asia, right? And when it crawled up there, I don't even know if crawl is the right word for it, but it was tiny and it grew to 3 inches long. So yeah, she waited a while.
Yeah, it was feeding off of her that entire time. And
I can't.
the doctor said that if she had waited much longer, it might have burrowed its way into her brain.
I can't.
That's insane.
Sandra, can you?
Look, Anna,
Yes.
I adore you. I adore the Young Turks. Let me just take this moment before I say you guys suck for really but even bringing this up that we have to talk about it and think about it is not okay. Does anyone else think this is not okay? I mean, I think this gal, because I have traveled a lot in my life, and there could have been a time in my life where that was something that happened to me, and I would have not handled it with such just spirit. So yay! But no, I do not like this at all. And, and
this is not okay with me.
I will say though, it reminds me, and hopefully it reminds all of us kids, to go to a doctor. Get that Obamacare, whatever it is you need to be able to go to urgent care when you might have an issue. Don't wait.
Yep.
Yes.
It might be a leech feeding on your brain.
Disgusting. All right, here's the question for this story. Are you scared of any bugs or animals? What would your nightmare scenario be, Sandra?
Ugh, why are we still talking about it? I thought, okay. I mean, of course, creepy crawly things, cockroaches, spiders, snakes, sure. However, my brain would explode if I had to be in let's say, a locked cage with poisonous spiders or snakes, because because I'd feel like I'd have some sort of control on whether or not I got bitten, and then I wouldn't have the knowledge to be able to save me. So I would lose my everything.
I feel like you're really unique in that thought. Like, I think most people would want to be in a room.
No, but like the poison.
That's a pretty legitimate fear. You would probably die if you were locked into a cage with a venomous spider.
I would kill myself. I'd be like, you know what? It's over. I'm gonna fucking kill myself. I'm gonna choke myself to death. Cara, I want to hear from you though.
You need to sign this suicide contract. All right, so this is weird because spiders, snakes, they don't bother me that much. Obviously, if they're venomous and there's a legitimate reason to be afraid, I probably would be. I hate crickets.
Why though?
I hate them. They're so disgusting to me.
What's so disgusting about them?
So they're like, they make a crunchy noise if you accidentally step on them. They like fly at your face, like they can
really
fly
wise.
sort of. They make horrible noises when you're trying to sleep, like the telltale heart, like they won't let you sleep.
Yep.
And also, where I grew up in Texas, there was a couple of summers where we had these cricket infestations that were like biblical locust proportions, where underneath the street lamps or at the gas stations, where there was light, they would be attracted, and there would be piles of dead crickets
disgusting.
underneath the streetlights, and the smell in the town.
Oh no!
It was so overwhelming.
that.
And so I think I'm literally scarred for life from these like dead crickets, and now when I even live in crickets are gross.
It's funny because out of all the insects that can crawl into your home, I think crickets are the ones that scare me the least. But you went through something traumatic as a kid, which is why it stands out to you. For me, it's mosquitoes, right? If there's a mosquito in the house, I will burn the house down. But I'm so afraid of them because they suck your blood and they spread diseases and they hurt when they bite into you. I'm afraid of needles. So the thought of like a flying needle machine that's gonna freaking spread a disease scares the hell out of me. So yeah, I mean, I actually want to have a longer discussion about this with you, Cara, because I'm curious, like, if there was a button that we can press and it would get rid of all the mosquitoes on the planet, would that destroy the ecosystem?
I don't think so.
Let's fucking kill those mosquitoes!
Mosquitoes are horrible. I mean, they're vectors for viruses. They're really, really dangerous. They're vectors for disease. And I'm not sure what they really contribute to
Nothing.
in the
Fear
ecosystem.
and disease, that's it.
Yeah.
But we want to hear from you guys. What are you afraid of? Do you agree with my point on mosquitoes? I want to know that there's a club out there that does want to fund research to destroy all mosquitoes on the planet. Comment in the section below, and we'll see you soon. There's a new sex toy on the market. It's referred to as the We Vibe 4 Plus, and what is supposed to make this sex toy different from all the other ones out there is that you and your partner can download an app, and your partner can manipulate it as you wear this vibrator out in public. Now, there are other vibrators that you can use out in public. They are remote controlled, but the thing that makes this one so different is the fact that you can use an app to manipulate it. So if you're a woman and you're out there grocery shopping, your husband can be sitting at home and just bzz, 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 and you'll maybe get off, maybe get a little excited. And so I'm curious to see if you ladies are into this. I want to hear your point on this. I'm going to start with you, Sandra, because you're the sex nerd. Make your point.
I have been waiting for this for so long, years and years, the conversation, like when's it gonna get to apps? When's it gonna get to apps? So you can be in Europe and they can be in South America and it's happening. You're deep, like, okay, go grocery shopping, or be on the phone, and hear them trying to check out. Basically, what I'm saying is, this is great. And the thing about sex toys is that there's a lot of repetition. It's as much as there's tons and hundreds and thousands on the market, a lot of it's repeat stuff. And so when technology breaks through to a new field, it's exciting. And yeah, oh my bod, WeVibe, there's a lot of companies right now rushing to the market with these apps, toys, and of course, each one's got its pros and its cons, and I'm just so glad it's finally here. Thanks for covering.
Cara, are you as excited about this?
I am happy for all of the people who are really happy that this is on the market. But I'm going to say a couple points. One, my vibrators at home, and I've got really good vibrators, are so loud. I don't want to be out in public and my pants start buzzing.
You need better vibrators.
They're really good vibrators. I have like Lilo vibrators that are rechargeable. They're really beautiful. They're very expensive. Yeah, but they're loud. Vibrators are loud. And I don't want my pants to start buzzing in public. That's weird. Also, I do have this, and this is like something that we could argue about all day and all night, so we won't waste time here, but sometimes I have this feeling kind of like, if you have to have sex on the kitchen table, you're probably doing it wrong. Like if you're having sex in bed, which is built for comfort, your sex is awesome and it's in bed and you're comfortable. You do it on the kitchen table and you get the kinks in the neck and you whatever.
No, but there's something so hot about like, oh my God, I can't wait for the fucking bed. We're gonna do it on the table right now.
Yeah, I don't have that.
That doesn't turn you on?
No, I don't have that. And maybe it's because, I just don't have that. And so for me, it's kind of like the same reason that people ask, why wouldn't you get your hood pierced? You don't actually get your clit pierced, nobody does that. But like, why wouldn't you get your hood pierced? Why wouldn't you get like a genital piercing? And I'm like, I don't want to get off climbing the stairs. I want to get to my destination while I'm climbing the stairs. I want to get off when I'm in the headspace to want to get off. I don't need that kind of sexual there's introverts and there's extroverts, and there's a lot of research about how their brains work differently, and it does seem like people who kind of score higher on the introvert scale are already overwhelmed with stimulus, which is why they tend to revert a little bit. And so they only need a little bit of stimulation to feel like they're in it. Extroverts require a lot. That's why they can study in loud rooms. That's why they need a lot of conversation all the time. I am a classical introvert. I don't want a bunch of extra stimulation. It's just gonna make me shut down.
Oh, I'm an extrovert. I like this. Okay. That's my only point. Go ahead.
I'm a totes introvert, yeah, okay. However, I have a strong play drive, so I have played with remote control vibrators with partners before, and it's such a fun bonding mechanism because it's funny. It's funny to be in the car together or wherever and just laughing about it. And if you have a long distance relationship, that's one of the hardest things about it.
Totally, I get that.
But I get that the bed is where it's utilitarian. That is where the sex happens and the sleeping happens. Yes, go there.
You have pillows.
Yes,
I get that. Yeah.
it's so funny and
It tickles your fancy, right?
But here's the thing, I don't want to have an orgasm while I'm shopping for juice. Like that's just weird. Like I just don't want that to happen.
It's so interesting to have this conversation. I want to have an orgasm whenever I can have an orgasm. If I could have an orgasm right now, I'd fucking have an orgasm right now, right?
I would literally never get anything done.
All right, we actually have to get to the. Did we ask you guys the question? No, we haven't. We haven't even asked the question. Would you rather be the person in control of this situation or the other way around? Okay, Sandra.
Oh, I mean, as long as there's trust involved, because to me this is also a trust exercise, because people who are like, bzz, 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 that's bad lovership when you're just constantly doing it. And you gotta take your time. So I like the idea of being the person surprised, because I like surprise, and I like laughing. it's really exciting to me. So that's what I would want.
Cara, what about you?
I'm sure anybody watching this could guess that I want to be in control. Like, I have absolutely no interest in being on somebody else's schedule. No.
I hear you. I hear you. I feel like in my career and my job and everything in life, I'm always the one who's like in control. And so when it comes to that stuff, I would rather be controlled or dominated or whatever. So that's my take. But I want to hear from you guys. We obviously had a very lengthy discussion on this, and you can chime in the comment section below. What do you prefer and what do you think about this sex toy? We want to hear from you, and we'll see you soon. There's nothing better than making fun of other people's tattoos, right? And that's what we're about to do in this segment. So let's go ahead and look at some of the pictures. BuzzFeed recently compiled the worst tattoos of all time. There's one of them. It says, "White boy swag."
Oh no.
He's really boxing himself in there.
Yeah.
Alexis loving it? Alexis is loving it?
I don't know.
Does it say always loving it, or does it say Alexis?
It doesn't matter because he has a giant golden arches on his back.
All right, good marketing for McDonald's.
See, that one I actually like.
I like that one too. This is my favorite one in the whole list.
It's meta.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Like, if I discovered that on somebody, I would start laughing. It's funny.
That is pretty funny. Okay, this one's hilarious because they are two corner pieces that would never fit together, and a couple did it.
Also, it looks like they drew them on themselves.
100%.
Those are terrible
These
tattoos.
are all poorly done.
I love that one so much.
So bad.
It's so bad, but it's also like
She's a bad girl, though.
She is a bad girl.
Yeah.
That's true.
Bad girl.
Oh no.
But why? Why did this happen?
But I like the comment.
It's such a bad portrait. Oh, I know. She's so proud of it.
Yeah.
She's so proud of
You know
this
what,
tattoo.
though? As long as she's proud of it, who cares?
Right. It's
Why? Oh. This is
That's the kind of guy
third
you
leg
bring
right
home
there.
to mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the kind of
Right.
guy you bring home to mom. My mom would
God.
love
It's
that.
like he lost a bet.
Yes.
Money over bitches.
I feel like he's quoting Abraham Lincoln.
No, can we just stop here for a second? I just love how this obviously unattractive guy is like, yeah, money over bitches, man. Like, when was the last time your ass got laid?
This was his plan B,
Yes,
for sure.
Exactly. Hilarious.
Oh no. I've got to admit though, it's well done.
It is well done and it's pretty funny.
This is a whole subgenre of bad tattoos. You know, the groinal tattoos.
Yeah, that kind
I
of
don't-
feed into
right.
yeah.
Like
it's not
elephants
good.
and things.
Boner garage.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Oh my god. I can't even imagine like my family's reaction if I had some ridiculous tattoo like that.
I have a tattoo in that location, but it doesn't say anything about putting anything into that location.
Right, it's not helping guide people around your body.
No.
Right this way, sir.
No, not at all. That
right.
I just don't understand.
So since we've already made points about those tattoos, I'm going to skip ahead and go straight to the question. Do you regret any tattoos or piercings that you have? If you could get another, what would it be? I'm going to start with you, Cara. I know you have an interesting story.
So I have a lot of tattoos. Most of them I really love. You know, my favorite tattoo is on my ribs. It's a quote from Carl Sagan that says, "We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." I have a beautiful, I think is beautiful, Archaeopteryx tattoo on my forearm. One of the first tattoos, actually I think it was tattoo number 2 or 3 that I got, is a giant piece on my lower back, affectionately titled the tramp stamp by people that aren't me. And it was going to be a whole back piece, but I kind of decided to never go there. It's massive. It hurt like a motherfucker. One of the guys from Guar, who was friends of my tattoo artist at the time, I grew up in Dallas, was watching me get it done, and he told me I was a badass because I didn't take anything. It was very painful. But yeah, I have a tramp stamp. It's like, come on. I'm not proud of that tattoo. I don't love it. It's all scarred. It's really raised up. But yeah, but the truth is, it's also on my back. So I never see it.
I never knew you had it.
I could give a shit. I can't see it. And it's funny because people ask me all the time, I have lots of tattoos, and when they want to get a tattoo, but they're afraid they'll be regretful, they say, well, what do you do? What do you do if you change your mind? What do you do if whatever? And I'm like, you get another one. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like,
A friend of mine had a tattoo that she didn't like. She got it when she was underage, actually. And it said, "What you see is what you get." And she regretted it immediately. And it was in her back, or on her lower back. And so she covered it up with like this massive tattoo of like fairies and stuff. And then she hates that one too.
yeah, people do that. That's the thing.
Disastrous.
At least my tattoo that I semi-regret is a well-done tattoo.
Yeah.
Like, it's a beautiful tattoo, and I had a great artist. I did it as an adult. It's just, you know, maybe I wouldn't have done that.
Oh, so it's not just placement, but it's also the look of it. It's both those things.
People would say it's tribal. I wasn't going for tribal at the time. It's very kind of Victorian and Gothic and whatever.
I have feelings about people calling that a tramp stamp because that's a beautiful part of the human body. And it frustrates me that now if you get a tattoo there, it makes you trashy, or it's kind of like a slut-shaming thing, which I don't appreciate. Don't. But then you have bicycle girl, you know, and you're like, no. But for me, I had my ears pierced when I was born. Not the same day, you guys, don't get worried. And then I got my septum pierced just earlier this year, actually, and I don't regret it. I've been loving it. But the one thing I do regret is not shopping around for tattoo and the right piercer, because he did it freehand and it's crooked. And I was it was a kind of a big step in like a body ownership direction. Like, I'm gonna pierce myself. And then the guy was a total douchebag and did it.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
I've been pleased with all my piercings, but I had the same thing. My mom, my mom's Puerto Rican. I was raised in like this kind of Hispanic culture, sort of. And you pierce your baby's ears. That's just what you do. And so I've had them since I was a baby, and they're not quite like level. You know what I mean?
I have an interesting baby piercing story too. Same thing with Armenians. They pierce female infants' ears, female infant, you know, she's young, very young. And so with this ear, apparently like I pulled it. So it's like a long hole. And you can kind of tell like my earrings are never, you know, even. So then my mom wanted to make up for it by getting me a second piercing when I was in like 7th grade, but I never use that hole. It just never looks right when I put my earrings there. I don't regret it, I don't really care. I've never gotten a tattoo. I've never been really into tattoos, you know what I mean? Like I just never really wanted one. So I haven't had any regrets in that way, but I have a belly button piercing, and some people are like, all right, maybe it's time for you to let that go. And I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
The same thing.
You do?
But I did recently, just so you guys know, I had my ear stretched to a 2 gauge. So I used to always wear really big plugs, and I'm finally letting them close in. And I was able to wear normal people earrings the other day. And I was so excited. But yeah, the belly button ring. And the lip ring, I'm always struggling. I turned 31 this week. I turned 31, and it's like, when am I gonna be that like old biker lady? Like I gotta get rid of it before then.
You're not near that. And you know what? As long as I have a relatively flat stomach, I'm gonna keep the navel ring. I like it. Okay. All right, but tell us what you guys think. Do you have any tattoos or piercings that you regret? We want to hear from you. Share in the comment section below. And as always, we'll see you guys soon. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the show. I know I did. It was a really fun discussion, and I want to give you guys a chance to let the audience know where to find you. You guys are both returning panelists, so a lot of people already know, but just in case, Sandra Daugherty?
Well, you can find me at sexnerdsandra.com. Really, it's my podcast. I do it weekly. It's on Nerdist and iTunes. Totally free. Please check it out. And I'm available for workshops and public speaking and college gigs all around the country.
Awesome. Cara Santa Maria.
And same with me, carasantamaria.com is my website. You can find my podcast there. You can also find it on iTunes and Stitcher. Again, totally free. It's called Talk Nerdy with Cara Santa Maria. You can also catch me, if you're local to Southern California, on SoCal Connected on KCET pretty regularly, and nationally and also now internationally on Techno on Al Jazeera America.
Very cool. I'm Ana Kasparian. You guys can check me out on a bunch of YouTube channels. YouTube.com/Ana Kasparian, YouTube.com/The Young Turks, and now YouTube.com/Styleog. We just launched a new fashion and lifestyle show. I want you guys to check that out. It's really fun. It's very laid back. We just want to have a fun conversation about men and women's fashion, and it's great. So check that out. Subscribe if you can, and we'll see you guys soon with another episode of The Point.
It sometimes doesn't feel worth it, but then I remember that, I mean, people will write me like, you helped save my marriage, you know, you've changed my life, you've set me free, stuff like that, and I go, well, gosh darn it, of course it's worth it.
Nice. You know? That's a good feeling. That's definitely a good feeling.
I like that you say, gosh darn it. That's so you.
Cara, what about you?
No, I mean, I'm a science communicator, so I have the best job in the world. No offense to you guys. But it's so much fun to be able to work to do my part to improve science literacy. I'm so passionate about it. But if I look back at historically, you know, I was working on a PhD. I was going to become a bench scientist. I was spending a lot of days doing animal research, which I totally support and promote. But there were days where I was like, is this in vain? Is this something that, you know, is this really going to help anybody? I don't think I was as good a bench scientist as I am a teacher, and so I had to make a decision to switch gears with my career. At that time, yes, I do think that for my personal choice, maybe what I was doing wasn't worth it.
Now, let's start off with celebrities, and a celebrity who made a really interesting point about how fame can be pretty dumb. Now, Zach Galifianakis came into fame, or shot into fame, in his role in The Hangover. But recently, he also starred in another movie called Birdman, which is actually pretty negative towards celebrities. It kind of tears celebrities down a little bit. And he was quoted as saying the following: "Being a celebrity is shit. It's dumb. I'm not interested in it. I like to be an actor and that's it. The blurred lines are, I think, man-made. I think celebrity is a man-made thing. It's not innate in us. We have people telling us we should pay attention to these people for the wrong reasons, their personal lives and that stuff." Now, I think that's a really interesting thing to say. He also continues to say, "I'm just being honest. I would rather do my work and go home and watch Lifetime or something." Okay, so he says that he loves what he does, but he just doesn't want all the extra attention that comes along with it. I think that's a fascinating point to make, but is this a case of a first world problem? Does it sound whiny to you? Should we get out our little violins? I don't know. Cara, make your point. Easy for someone to kind of have a negative reaction to what Galifianakis is saying there. I mean, my initial reaction was, dude, you're wealthy, you're successful. There are people out there who can't even make ends meet or put food on the table for their families. Why are you complaining? But at the same time, I think of other celebrities like Amanda Bynes, and she's going through mental health issues in a very public way right now. And you have tabloids tearing her down and making the situation even worse. So I could totally understand where Galifianakis is coming from when you have complete strangers being so interested in personal elements of your life that they really have no business knowing about. So here's the question for the story. Have you ever felt like what you do for a living is worth it or not worth it? Okay, let me start with you, Sandra.
Oh man, I mean, how can I not feel like what I do as a sex educator and a public speaker? And I mean, I help people. That's kind of the heart of what I do, and it sounds kind of like rah, rah to say that, but I mean, honestly, if I have a hard time feeling like it's not worth it, like I'm tired, I'm drained, or if I'm not taking care of myself the way I should be.
I think that it's probably both. I think that, yes, when you have a certain amount of fame, there's a lot of things that come along with it that you have to kind of accept or make a decision, like we saw Dave Chappelle making, or we've seen other celebrities doing the same thing because the fame overwhelmed them. At the same time, I do think that we hold a microscope up to celebrities' lives a way that we never did in the past, and I don't know, I can't imagine living that way.
Absolutely. Sandra, what about you?
Okay, so I was freaking out a while ago when my podcast started to get more attention. I'd never gotten that kind of attention before, so I started looking into research around celebrity, and there's very little research around what it feels like to be a celebrity. And the reality is so different from their point of view versus everybody else's. So there's a lot of negatives that go along with it, so I can completely understand having a negative feeling toward it, but it's still like, you can criticize it, but you're still really lucky, really lucky. So shut up a little bit.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. It's really easy. What's up, everyone? Welcome to The Point. I'm your host, Ana Kasparian, and we have an all-star panel today. We have some sexy yet insanely brilliant panelists to join us. In fact, let's go ahead and meet them. We have Sandra Daugherty. She is the host of Sex Nerd Sandra podcast. You guys should definitely check that out. And we also have Cara Santa, host of the Talk Nerdy podcast. How are you ladies doing?
Good.
Great.
I'm so excited to have you on. I mean, come on. Two insanely hot and smart women on the panel. If these videos don't go viral, I don't know what the hell will. Anyway, so what are we going to talk about on the show today? We're going to start off with one celebrity who says that being a celebrity is, quote, dumb. Who is it and why does he feel that way? Also, another example of another school using a zero tolerance policy to almost criminalize a 5-year-old. And a backpacker comes home with a strange little critter crawled up her nose. And then an iPhone-controlled sex toy. Is this one of a kind? We'll give you the details on that. And then finally, my favorite type of story, the worst tattoos of all time, because there's nothing better than a permanent mistake.